to see and experience youth work in different forms. So just to even give you an example, and I suppose it's as well just to say up front that for me, the work of well-being and mental health really has a thread throughout all the different contexts within which we work with young people, and recognizing that, I think, is important and valuable in our work. And I think the challenge of how we have kind of moved from the offline to the online space and carrying that with us is something really worth reflecting on. So just to give you a flavor of the domains, I suppose, that I exist in as a youth worker. So I'm like when people ask, that's what I say. I'm a youth worker. That's a part of my identity, I suppose. But I also, as a youth worker, I sit on a local youth mental health committee. So again, with other actors and stakeholders in the field that are kind of focusing on youth mental health. I'm on a school board of management. I'm part of a youth mental health group called Be Well Bray, who have a specific shout out to Léargas, actually, because in 2013, the first bit of funding that group ever got to deliver a Be Well week, a positive mental health week, was from Léargas. So again, that thread of connection is really important to recognize for me. I also teach in Liberties College, so the Youth and Community Studies course there. I teach social justice principles, the module there. So that's another thread. I coordinate Corlin and Ogue in Wicklow as well, so the Youth Council. And I work with the National Youth Council of Ireland, so NYCI, and I kind of work in the international space there with Young Voices and also some stuff with the Dev Ed. And beyond that, I'm kind of a trainer in the field as well, both nationally and internationally. So it's really been fascinating for me to be able to see where all those roles and all those experiences transfer from the offline spaces into the online spaces. And, you know, with this lens of mental health and well-being and what tools are available or how I perform in that regard, it's been interesting for me to kind of use today as an opportunity to reflect on how all that has worked, and to contrast the different spaces. So I hope that with what I kind of share, that might land with people within your own contexts. And I think from the list of participants, there is kind of quite a broad spectrum of people. And for me, I suppose there is that if we spend time with young people, our role kind of there's different roles and purposes and obligations and responsibilities. But beyond that, there's always that sense of care within the role. So when I'm thinking about the scenario that we faced with in COVID, I always, for this, it's like, what was the context before and what is the context now, or what has been the context when COVID landed? And that was really important start point for me, because when I'm thinking about my identity as a youth worker, that's the story I tell myself about who I am as a youth worker. And that is based on all the experiences I've had, all the context I've worked in, the young people I've met, the colleagues I've worked with, and the different methods and approaches. And that's part of my identity. And within that, then there's the skills and competences that I have acquired, that I've trained to develop. There's also the teamwork element. Who have I worked with, or who do I work with, and how do we work together, and what are the synergies and even the tensions that exist when you work in a team. And then another dimension is the context. So if I'm coordinating a youth council, there's a particular context to the work. If I'm working with at-risk youth, there's a particular context. If I'm teaching, there's a context. If it's a mental health group specifically, there's a context, and they're all relevant in their own right. And I suppose with that, there's purpose, and what are the plans and the goals and the responsibilities that you have in your role. And then, transcending all of those, and I'm sure it's the same in the group, there's relationships and connections. And for me, they're the foundation of all my work in all of those domains, relationships and connections. And again, I would suggest that for all of us when we perceive our work, the young people are at the center of it, and everything kind of flows out from there in whatever. I like to do spirals, but everything flows out from when we place young people at the center of our work. And that's about where are they at, what are their needs, and what's within our capacity to deliver that will benefit them in one way or another. And I suppose when I kind of reflect on the last 14 weeks, it's like that was all my reality. wonderful reality, and then COVID-19 landed. And I really think it's important that when we're reflecting on what we've done in the online space, it's really important to kind of just take a moment to look at that transition that wasn't really a transition. It was a, for me, it's like in one swoop, everything was thrown off the table. All of our logic models, all of our strategic plans, our ways of working, our spaces of working, all the things that I just described were kind of like went off the table in one go. And I think that's really important and relevant when we start thinking about what we did next. And it wasn't even, for me, it wasn't even, there wasn't necessarily even the headspace to think about, how's my summer? How am I going to handle the summer? It was like, right now, this has happened. I remember, I don't know, whether we do that. Do you remember where you were when the announcement was made that lockdown was happening and everything was closing? I know for me, I was in college in Liberties, and we actually put it on the big screen in the classroom. We put it on the projector and watched the live address. And it just kind of it was quite surreal. So for me, it's important to kind of flow from what was and then into how do we adapt to that scenario. And it kind of became pretty apparent pretty quick that within the chaos of what was happening, there wasn't really a chance to rumble with, so how are we going to adapt to this? And well, let's have a few meetings and adapt our plans and look at our strategic plan, and maybe we need to reflect on our policies. It was very much, this is happening. Straight away, we're wondering what's going to happen to young people. How are they going to manage this? How are they going to handle this? And then all the issues about your identity and how you deliver your work start kind of hopping in your head. And the start point, I suppose, is business as usual is not possible. So what next? And I would say that one of the strengths of our sector, or those who work with young people, is that the principles weren't swept off the table. The principles of our work and how we work with young people and that approach was still there. So we had an anchor in terms of the values and principles of our work with young people. And for me, that means that the work of supporting their well-being and mental health was present in our thoughts and in how we might react. And I think, it's also fair to say that there was this question about what is transferable into a new work reality. And again, as professionals, we think about safeguarding, and we think about consent, and we think about our organizational policies and the approval of management, and all those elements are important, and we try and tick those boxes as quick as possible. And then we move into the transferable piece. And I suppose I just want to share with you a little some examples of how that was for me, and how those methodologies and approaches and tools kind of made it possible for me to continue supporting young people's mental health and well-being, and to do that, I suppose, in conscious and intentional ways, and also in responsive ways. And I kind of had this four kind of step approach when it came to transferring into the online space and managing the chaos of what was unfolding around me. And I suppose the 4 words that I used to help me process things as they were unfolding was assess, adjust, respond, reflect. So my first in every scenario that was being presented to me, it was my first instinct was assess. What is the need? What's happening? What's the situation? What's the need? And then the adjust was about, okay, what are the options now for how we can work? Me as an individual, or the teams that I exist in, or the service that I'm part of, what needs to be adjusted? And adjust was always a factor, because everything had to be adjusted. And then respond was do it, try it, give it a go, do something. And then the reflection part was really important, because that was about saying, how was it? Did it work? Do we keep doing that, or do we change and do something else? And what I would say is that like what was so, and I'm sure it's the same for others, that what was so critically important and what made those 4 elements workable was this constant flow of communication with young people, with colleagues, and being able to not have too much pride in what you're trying to do, and take a hit if you have to about, no, that's gone, that's not working, that's a fail, try something else. Because if you invest too much pride in, oh, I have this great idea, and people go, no, that's rubbish, then you're going to have to manage the hit that you have to take for yourself. So the ongoing communication was really important, and even the collective sense of assessment, assessing the situation. I can have a sense of what it is, but if I don't communicate that and suss it out with others, and then I might not be on the ball or spot on with it. And then when it came to the mental health and well-being stuff, it was about this trying to kind of look at where we can play a role for young people in the new reality, in the new online reality. And again, when I think about that, or as things were unfolding, it was messaging. What is the messaging that's available? What activities are available in the online space to promote and support well-being and mental health? What interventions are available in the new reality in terms of online? And then that world, again, which is a reality for many of us, is referrals. Are referral pathways still available to us in our work? Are other services still working away? And again, that might be something that is very easy to do in normal circumstances, but might be more challenging in the online space. And then the other services that are parallel to us. I think it was really important, again, to recognize what else is. We usually map young people in terms of who are the actors in their lives in terms of their well-being, and where do we collaborate with those and maintain our own roles. And I think that, again, there was a mapping piece that was really important in that regard. And then I suppose it was about the whole world of tools and options. And that was it fun? I don't know. It was real, and that was the truth of it. And I think one of when we're looking at the young people that we serve and service, I suppose there was the age cohort was a challenge in there. Is that if they're too young to be on social media, or to access, or to have a WhatsApp and be in a WhatsApp group, or then there's one step removed from our usual context of working with them, and we have to navigate that. And I think there was a big part for especially the 10 to 14 age group, where the parents were the gatekeepers to our contact, and accessing parents using online tools is quite different to directly connecting with young people. So there was a whole piece of connecting with parents, knowing where they're at online. So parents usually on Facebook, and then you're kind of going back through the files and making sure that the phone numbers are up to date. Trying to email consent forms and see if they're coming back. But there was that chat that was really important to recognize, that in order to make the connection with the younger age group, the parents were the gatekeepers for that, and that required work and energy and effort. And then I suppose in terms of the direct work, there was this, for me, that the beginning of the whole story was scrambling. It was this, how do we get them? How do we get them? Where are they? What are they doing? And it was, do we have a Facebook account? Well, we better set one up. Do we have an Instagram? Well, we better set one up. What's Discord? I've heard some people use that. Should we try Discord? I don't know what, you know. So there was a whole piece of work in terms of Zoom became, I wonder what the profits were for that company in the last 14 weeks, but I'd say they're astronomical, because we were all just pulled into the Zoom world. And I think as workers, we were pulled in there, but young people, not so much. Facebook Messenger became a space where we engaged with young people. And then the interesting spaces like PlayStation and Xbox, where they live and engage and interact a lot. Us, again, not so much, but are we willing to go there? Are we willing to share their spaces with them? Is there an invitation for us to go into them spaces, and what can we do there? And then there was the Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, and there was these spaces where, you know, we heard that they might be, the schools were bringing them there. There were other actors in play. And I think for me, across my different spaces, there was a challenge there in terms of finding the right tool and then using it effectively. And I'll give you a couple of examples of some of the, I suppose, the experiences and the challenges. A quick one for even my Liberties work with the students. So the students, you know, when they finished up, they were really in a kind of final phase of their education journey within the Liberties. And they had to complete assignments. So there wasn't much learning left to do, but if they didn't complete assignments, they weren't going to pass the course. And again, I'm sure people know, anyone who's kind of involved in learning roles, particularly with young people who might be vulnerable, the removal of the space was a huge challenge for some of the students. And for example, for me, I had some students who were living in homeless shelters, and therefore the college was their haven. The college was where their tools were to do their assignments. The college was where they met important people and had support structures, and that disappeared overnight. And at the same time, the responsibility of completing assignments was still there. And I suppose for me, there was a huge challenge. I work on Thursdays, I go in, I teach, I leave. That's my role in Liberties College. When we closed down on the Thursday, the 12th, there was whatever 3 or 4 sessions left. And for the young people, they had all these assignments looming. And for me, I had to decide, how do you respond to their needs? So if I assess the scenario, it's like they have to get their assignments done, or they're all the energy and investment that they've put into achieving in this course is under threat. So I had to decide, how do I connect with them? How do I support them? And how do I make sure that they have the best opportunity to complete their studies and submit assignments? And that was, again, about trying and failing and trying again. I remember the first Zoom meeting that I organized, like 10 o'clock next Thursday, we'll have a Zoom meeting, we'll just go as normal. And because we'll all just be in the mode, we're usually here on a Thursday, and one person showed up to the Zoom meeting. And she said, they're all asleep. What's wrong with you? Everyone's in bed. You know, they don't have to be up, so they're not up. So I was like, okay, plan B. So I had to park that, and I had to decide, and I'm sure there'll be interesting conversations in the breakout rooms about how we adapted our boundaries and how we adapted our ways of working in terms of when we're doing our work, when we're available to do our work, how we follow up on the work. What changes from a 2-hour slot to then supporting someone to complete assignments or get to an end goal requires a different type of commitment. So for me, it was doing tip videos and sending them. So email, they would always respond to emails because they were used to that. So, but I had to kind of stimulate them. And for some, their living environment was just not conducive to working and completing assignments. So I organized more Zoom meetings at a time that everyone agreed to, emails with tip videos, to me explaining. I did audio explanations of their assignments where they could sit down and think that I'm there with them, saying, and for this one, you've got to think about this and this and this. And so fulfilling my role as an educator and being generous and being patient and asking for extensions if they needed them, and really supporting them to complete and to get to an endpoint. And I have to say that for some of them, to their eternal credit, and I'm absolute awe of them, they did it, and some didn't. And again, there's that challenge of reconciling. Did I not find the right tool? Did I not find the right model? Or what did I not do? And now they're left with a fail after my module, instead of what I know they would have achieved, which is a merit or a distinction if they could have made it in. So the Liberties one is quite unique, but I think for those in education, that whole adapting and change was really important, and I think it will continue when September comes, because that challenge isn't going to go away very soon. So, and then just to give you an example from the Be Well perspective, so Be Well Bray is a youth mental health group. They're self-organized, they're youth-led, and they have existed in Bray since 2012. And they've had this role of doing workshops and going to schools and working with parents and building a sense of this, fighting stigma about mental health, and then promoting positive messages about mental health. And then the third strand, I suppose, is equipping young people with the tools to manage their own mental health. And again, as a group that kind of thrives in spaces with others, and that was taken away. So Be Well had to kind of adapt and wonder, is there a role for us now during this pandemic? And I suppose for them, to their credit, there was this fascinating evolution of how do we live in an online space and try to do the best that we can. And that was, again, about using the Facebook page, because a lot of adults were there, and parents and other actors in young people's lives, and the work involved is creating graphics with messaging. So the messaging part was important for Be Well, and that was about accessing your creativity. And again, apps like Canva, which is a free online tool for creating graphics. And again, it's kind of trusting young people to know where these tools are, and then challenging them to go and take them and turn them into useful opportunities for messaging. So there was messaging, there was going into Instagram, and then kind of looking at what else is happening in the field, in the mental health field. So supporting others who maybe are more equipped to do this stuff, like Jigsaw, and who are kind of offering things that are far above what Be Well can offer, but we're a channel into what they're doing. So we're telling parents that Jigsaw are doing amazing webinars for parents. Here's when they're on, here's what you can expect from them, tune in and you'll get something from it. So they kind of adapted their role in terms of how they can be a messenger for others in the field, but how they can also consistently do their own messaging. And a really important part of that, I suppose, as well, was linking back to all the Be Well members who have ever been involved in Be Well, and kind of promoting this alumni kind of scenario where they might be grown up now, but they're coming back in and re-promoting the Be Well dimension, that mental health, the positive mental health dimension of their lives, and remembering what they did and celebrating what has gone before really helped to elevate the presence and the profile of the Be Well work. Just to give you an example then of the NYCI stuff. So in Young Voices in particular, in NYCI, we usually host large gatherings of young people. And that could be anything up to 80 young people in the Gresham Hotel in Dublin. We get funding from Léargas, and we pay for their transport. They come from all over Ireland. They spend the day together, and it's usually very dynamic and very engaged. And we've met some phenomenal young people down to the years. So we had this moment of deciding, and within the work of Young Voices, there is this kind of ongoing growth and development in terms of young activists or young change makers. And there's this lovely synergy of young people from all different backgrounds coming together and benefiting from the stories that they might share, including the struggles, I suppose. So for us, there was a challenge about how do we adapt now to the fact that we can't do that? And is there potential for doing it online? And the reality of that was, what are the options? We could do it in Zoom, and we would have to reduce the numbers because it's a space where young people need to engage and have dialogue, so it can't be one-dimensional. It's, you know, a webinar, a passive experience wouldn't necessarily be something that would attract them. So we made a decision to kind of continue the work of Young Voices, to ask young people whether they wanted that, and to design then a response around what they were interested in and what their needs were. And it was really interesting because within that, we have a responsibility to create dynamic workspaces for young people within Young Voices. And Zoom is limited in that regard. So what we did was, and what we ultimately decided again in terms of tools, was that how can we replicate the work that we do, support them when they're present, and give them a purpose. So we were very conscious of checking in with them and then giving them a purpose, and that was really important. And so we used, and again, Anne mentioned Mentee Meter. So again, as a tool, it's a way of people can dip out of the Zoom space and go into a Mentee Meter, or you can share the screen to show them what it is. And then there's a key question there, and you can create a word cloud. So in terms of a dynamic space, what you might do on a flip chart, you can do in an online space. And again, the challenge is in the questioning and how it then stimulates, and then how it has a purpose beyond that in terms of conversations. We also use a tool called Padlet, Padlet, which is a fascinating, again, a free tool whereby it's like a workspace. So it's almost like a notice board, but there are different sections where you can be working live. So when we did small group work, for example, in the Young Voices space, and we're asking them key questions about how has it been during COVID-19 for you? How has it been in your community? And what do you want to do next? They can shift into this space where there's a Padlet and they can be working live, and then the comments and the feedback are captured, and then that stays there, and that becomes a working space that people can go back to. And I suppose it helps them then in terms of a reflective space to go back to. And really what we felt, the feedback from the guys was that some of them kind of admitted I wasn't really going to come because I couldn't imagine that it's possible to have this type of stuff in an online space. But they tried, and I think that again that's a testament to how we try and encourage participation. But the in terms of the well-being of the group, it was really interesting that we did two particular groups, and one of them they said we don't want to talk about the bad stuff. We don't want to talk about the problems. This is shit. Sorry if there's. And they said this is crap, and why would we want to keep talking about how crap it is? And what they really wanted was an outlet for something else. And what they wanted was a bit more in terms of we want to have a purpose. So we don't want to just come in and have crack. We want to have a purpose. So they've kind of moved phenomenally in their own right. They've moved now into a space where they're organizing a set of gatherings for young people, designed by the young people of Young Voices, where they're going to invite young people in to talk about social justice and issues about how they can play a role in their community. They're going to try and organize inspirational interviews with activists from around the world or change makers and host them in an online space. And then they want to kind of gather everything together after a 3-month period and do a big reflection. And again, in terms of their feedback, it was important that they were able to say, continue. We could have said we'll park Young Voices until September, and then we'll check in then and see what the story is. And they were very much saying, no, we want to have something to do, and that's where we tap into their well-being by giving them almost a distraction in one sense, but a distraction with a particular purpose, where their headspace goes into, well, we have to do this and we have to organize this and there's work to be done. And then we're creating pockets of spaces where they can self-organize. And I think it's important, again, to recognize that it's not just about the spaces that we set up for young people, and we're not necessarily the center of it, but if we can stimulate and support them to be in spaces where they can be purposefully and intentionally doing work that kind of projects them into a positive future somewhat, that's very valuable. 2 more things I'll say, if that's all right, Anne. Are you going to...
quickly, because we're way over time.
Yeah. The most challenging piece for me was my youth council group, and I think the truth of that was school going young people were really in a bad place, and I had a lot of Leaving Cert students, and they were just so low and struggled so much with this unfolding scenario of the Leaving Cert that they were incapable of shifting into anything else. And for me, it was just about this persistent invitation. We're going to meet on Wednesday night. We're meeting again tonight, so that they could we did no work as a youth council. It was just like, what do you think? Oh yeah, okay. And what do you think of the latest? And it was just an unpacking space. And I think, again, for us to shift out of what we think our roles and responsibilities are and create a space where it's just being present and sharing time. And eventually they did get to a space where they are now very consciously focusing on what needs to happen in schools in September to support the well-being of young people who are coming back with such fear and anxiety about what has just happened to them. And then the final thing I'll say is about the challenges in terms of broadly for us as youth workers and or people who have roles with young people. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on that boundaries piece where we were bringing young people into our houses, unprecedented. Never in our imagination would that happen, but that was a reality in terms of our online work. We were also having a parallel experience of COVID-19 in our own separate reality of not being youth workers or not having roles in our professional spaces. And that involved the family struggles, the homeschooling struggles, the wondering about your future work struggles, and then the kind of needing to have the skills to do this online work and needing to evolve and develop. And that whole thing, for me, I would say, the final thing I'll say is that there was a constant question marking about how well I was doing. And those young people who are the hardest to reach, who went missing in action, who didn't respond, and you had to convince yourself on some level and reconcile that I'm still offering, I'm still asking, and maybe the lack of response doesn't mean they're not engaged. But if I certainly was doing nothing, then nothing would be happening. And I think young people will when they reflect, and we maybe support them to reflect on this scenario, this whole online experience, there won't be question marks about where were youth workers during COVID-19. I fundamentally believe that the reflection will say you were there and you tried, and you were innovative and you adapted and adjusted, and I think that will absolutely reflect in the what next, because I think the next challenge is what do we take from the online stuff and how do we bring that forward while looking forward to and readjusting to the face-to-face stuff that is our bread and butter. And I suppose, and I think it's the next thing that Anne might talk about, is that within all of that was a whole piece of work around self-care for us as workers. And I would say that without recognizing and intentionally doing that for myself, I wouldn't have made it to this point whatsoever. And some of that was, again, realizing and noticing that I need to pursue my own self-care. And it's something that I think is really important in terms of the reflection of the whole sector, about what self-care, what did you realize about self-care during this whole time? Sorry, I went over.
Great, thanks, Dermot. Yeah, I think it's very interesting, that issue of, you know, in this crisis, you know, normally youth workers might have to support young people when they're in crisis, but this time, you know, youth workers would also be in crisis, you know, and that issue of self-care is really important. What we're going to do now is break you into groups, because it's quite a large group. I'm going to break you into fairly small groups, just to have the opportunity maybe to reflect on what you've heard from Dermot and how that, you know, links to maybe your experience, any differences, and just share in smaller groups what your experience in terms of your own work and the work you do with directly trying to support young people. Is there anything you kind of would be helpful to share? So I'll break you into groups now. It'll probably just be for about 7 minutes, I think. But we should be popping into groups. You name it. If there was a job. Hi, Robbie.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm having really broadband troubles. I was kicked in and out. And it was recorded though, was it?
Yeah, I can put you back into a group if you want.
When are they coming back?
I'd say in about 3 or 4 minutes.
All right. I might wait and then just come back instead of interrupting their group. Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks a million.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I felt a bit bad breaking up those rooms. You know, if you're in a workshop, you just go into a room and say, and then people continue the conversation, whereas you're like 60 seconds and I mean it with a Zoom call. So yeah, I just don't want to go too much over time, even though we are over time, and popped into a few breakout rooms and there were really interesting conversations going on. So it's really interesting to hear that bit. So 5 seconds, all the breakout rooms will be closed. Dylan, are you back with us?
Yeah, got kind of cut off there. Thanks.
Oh, hi.
How many
Is that
people
you, Dylan, under John Fian?
There's
No?
He's going.
Sorry.
I think we're all in different positions on the screen.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Chairs.
Can everyone mute themselves except Dylan?
Hello.
Hi, Dylan, there you are.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Dylan. So, thanks a million, Dylan, because I think it's so important just to get that we've been talking about different perspectives, just to get your perspective on this issue. So if you could do that in about sort of 10 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But just, it's been a big issue for young people, and I really wanted to get your perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Dylan O'Toole, and I'm a very proud member of Connect BMYP in Bray. My youth workers be Paul Tracy and Adam Burke. So yeah, I'll start from COVID-19. Everything changed. Everything started to close. School closed. I was out of work. Obviously, I couldn't see most of my family. So yeah, tough times were coming, and I felt like the lads recognised that. Adam and Paul recognised the tough times, and really they had to come online. And I'm sure, I don't know if they have, I doubt they have had training for all that, but they done very well. They recognised that. I didn't realise how dependent I was on the U project. And before this, it was a place to go. It was a place to talk. And it was really tough for me because I was doing my Leaving Cert, and I suppose I didn't know what was happening with the world at all. So basically, if I went to the U project on any normal day, it's a place to vent, it's a place to talk about whatever I wanted. I know the Leaving Cert was really tough, so the lads were still there. They didn't leave us, which was great. I soon realised it's not about the premises, it's not about where you are. It's about having the youth workers and the young people. Like, you could put us into a field with nothing, and I guarantee we think of 100 games in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? But yeah, Leaving Cert, and we done our Zoom calls, and I talked to the lads about that, because I was really kind of upset and angry at the time. I didn't know what was going on with the Leaving Cert, and I really had to vent all that out. And when I did, I recognised my feelings, and I figured out what I could do. And because I talked to the lads, then I end up going and writing a spoken word about the Leaving Cert and how I'd like it to be cancelled, because I didn't feel it was fair. So I put that online. It was over 15,000 views across platforms, over 400 shares across platforms. TD Mick Barry shared it to his event page. And he was in the Dáil talking to Leo Varadkar. So, like, that was the lads helping me. If I hadn't had the lads there, I would have just been angry and upset. I probably would have went and put my face into a pillow. But I talked to the lads. I recognised my feelings. That brought it from a personal level. Obviously, people around here, a local level, then a national level. So it's just something so small. That little chat that helped me there. I suppose the social media, the lads upped their social media game so much. Like, honestly, there was stuff on the Connect page every day, and you'd never be bored. I felt like they said, they were kind of saying, we'll adapt to you, you don't have to adapt to us. They didn't put up saying, right lads, we're on Facebook, if you want us, connect there. They gave out the offer and said, whatever platform you use around, we'll come on to it. We went on to Zoom, House Party, Discord, Facebook, Instagram. So I felt like they adapted to us, and we didn't have to do that, which was nice, because maybe some of the younger kids wouldn't have Facebook and they can hop on Discord or House Party, or they might have had Instagram. So that was great. I felt like they found a balance very well. So I felt like there was, with a few people we work with, like, a while back and stuff, it can start to get annoying if they're buzzing off your phone every 10 minutes. But the lads found that balance where they weren't annoying us, they were helping us. And they were thrown into our group chat you would just like a catch up tonight? If you said yeah, we all hopped on the Zoom calls. It was great. And that was just our way to talk to them, and I felt like they never went away. Unlike, you know, even some of my family I didn't see. So seeing the lads from the U project was great, and you know, it helped me through COVID-19. Obviously they put loads and loads of stuff onto the page. You know, some things took off, some things worked very well, some things obviously didn't, but it was important that they gave that variety, I felt, because say one of the things with Street Striker, now 10 people could have done Street Striker, which was great, and then there was a bake-off, and say 2 people could have done the bake-off, but that was so important because that dragged 2 people in that probably didn't feel included in the football, and that brought 2 people in, that made 2 people happy that day doing that bake-off. So I think it's really important, and you know, the lads done a great job of providing different stuff all over the place. You know, we had things like watch parties where we watched films and we talked about them, and we had living in a box challenge. It was like a social awareness piece where we put our duvets down and we put them in half and we sat on our bedroom floors and done challenges, you know, like the 2 meter kind of rule, and we done challenges and we were on Zoom calls, and you know, it was great because we really had nothing to do, and we were kind of worried about everything. It was something to take our mind off stuff. Obviously with the Street Striker, where we were Adam set challenges and we had to go out and record ourselves doing it. Online quizzes such as the Simpsons quizzes and Bray quizzes and stuff. We had Zoom calls and the check-ins. We had different challenges, life tips on sleeping, and you know, how many hours sleep you should get, and different things to make your day easier. Fitness videos, where Adam done tutorials of and home workouts that you could be doing at home. And we done a live streams with Paul where we hopped on and on the Connect page and everyone watched us do quizzes and stuff. Then we done Disability Awareness Week like we usually do. Charity, we done charity piece. So the older group done leg wax and shave or dye, and they raised well up over 1,000. We done the Darkest, even though Darkest into Light didn't go ahead this year, we done our own one, and everyone who lit a candle, they donated €1 to PA the House. So that was fantastic. Trying to think, the list really goes on. So we had study skills was a different thing. Adam done them for people in 5th year who were in the same boat, or people before the Leaving Cert was cancelled 6 years worrying about studying without teachers, because that was really tough. And then we had interviews from, you know, the lads got people around Bray to do interviews, you know, people who are really into sport, into makeup. We got to know a lot of people we might see for doing makeup or playing football, but we got to see their insight, which was great. Yeah, like it really helped the whole way through COVID-19. I thought, you know, when it all happened, I said, this is it, the centre's gone. You know, the community centre is where our U project is. I said, this is gone, school is gone. I said, oh, it's going to be really tough. And as I said, the lads recognised them tough times and they stepped up. And I seen everything coming online a few days after, and I was like, oh, maybe you know, this is only for the first few days, but it was always there, and they never stopped. And honestly, it was phenomenal. The whole thing, I couldn't believe how well they were doing and how much effort they were putting in. And yeah, I was really grateful for that. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective as a young person. I felt like in our U project it was very positive through the whole way through.
Right, that's really interesting to hear, Dylan. Thank you so much, because I think, you know, young people in the Leaving Cert year had one of the most difficult times, you know, with all that uncertainty. So we really appreciate your feedback, and just what you said about the kind of the support, the youth service and the different activities and going into your space as well was great. I'd love to see your spoken word piece, so if you could send us the link, if it's on YouTube or somewhere, I can send it out to the group, because it'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
So just because we're coming up to 1:30 now, and I don't want to kind of go too much over time. So if people have to leave, that's fine. I might take another few minutes just to go through the KA2 projects, and then I'll send you on the Mentee Meter evaluation at the end. But don't worry if you've got other things going on, if you need to move. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I'm not going to show you this whole presentation. But I suppose one of the things we're looking at, it's, you know, Léargas works on supporting youth mobility. We can't travel anywhere at the moment except within our own counties. So youth exchanges and things like that, it's really difficult to plan for. But what we are trying to support is that there are these projects, Key Action 2 strategic partnerships. Now they do involve working with other countries, so there is some travel, but they are easier to organize online than, say, a youth exchange, which would be more of a complicated thing. So I'm going to send you this PowerPoint, but I'm just going to stay around, and if you want to ask questions about it, but I won't run through the whole part of it. But basically the idea of strategic partnerships is that they're transferring practice at a European level. So that could be peer learning, it could be some kind of an European cooperation, it could be innovation. But the idea is, so if you've had the experience of working on a youth exchange with another youth organization and you found similar issues that you're working on, you can transfer that practice and that learning between and do a project on that. So the idea is there's two types of strategic partnerships. There's what we call the exchange of good practice, which is literally groups around Europe would meet and talk about ideas or practices that they have, learned from each other, and then maybe do a small kind of report on it or a small kind of event. With those kind of, just to give you an idea of the types of activities, within that type of project, the exchange of good practice, you can do things like blended mobility of learners. That would be something like a youth exchange type event. You could do a staff training, but you can still, you know, these are projects that can be 2 to 3 years. So you could do your online things at the start of the project, and then hopefully in the future, then when you can travel, push those parts of the project out to that. Within that, then there's this particular type of project called a youth initiative project, and that's where the idea comes from the young people themselves. And so that would be if the young people come up with the idea and plan a project themselves, that would be a youth initiative project. Within that, then there are projects called strategic partnerships supporting innovation, and that would be where you've got the same topics, but you actually want to develop a resource or an output, and there will be funding available for that. So I'm going to go through three project ideas. So this is a project from Davis College in Mallow, and it's really interesting when you look at the title of this, Supporting Students in Times of Flux, which is exactly what we're going through. The Davis College in Mallow, when they applied for it, their flux was they were doing a new building. They had a huge increase in the number of students in the school, so there was a lot of flux in that. That picture there is an exchange that they did with Norway as part of the project, but they were working with schools who'd gone through similar processes in Europe and learning how to support themselves and also the students in the school. And you know, the impact of that was very strong in the school because of the difficulties they were going through. They learned how to do different activities that would support the students. Move the slide. another kind of, this would be an innovation project, was the Screenagers project, where they looked at digital tools and social media in youth work. And that was a research project where they researched basically the use of digital tools in youth work. And that report then was published, where they could say, okay, these are the gaps in youth work, these are the things that support. And it was a collaboration again between countries who were working on the same issues. Finally then, the example of, this was Youth Work Ireland and Involve, who work with traveller young people. And they developed a status toolkit. So that was really to support youth organisations to engage in the process of self-evaluation and agree a plan to support how they could be more inclusive of members of the traveller community in their organisation. So I suppose it's just to give you an example, these projects can be things that you're working on already. And working with European partners, there's a lot of learning, there's support, there's funding available. So it doesn't have to be some new shiny thing that's outside of what you're doing. It can be something that you're involved in already. And it's, with the next deadline is coming up in October. I'm going to send you we'll be doing in the run up to that, we'll be doing application clinics and support. And you'll have my email and the follow-up if you have any particular questions on it. And I'm happy to do a kind of more in-depth one-to-one conversation if you have any questions on it as well, because I know this has been a bit rushed. So I'm going to leave it there on that. If there are any questions, I can stay after. What I'm going to give you now is the Mentee Meter, just if you could take even 2 minutes, just because this is our 8th webinar, but we're still learning a lot. So it is really important to get your feedback on on how these work and what kind of topics as well that you'd be interested in doing in future webinars. So the Mentee code for this is 432762. It should be coming up for you. So the first question is just, how would you rate the overall event?
Sorry, I've never done a Mentee code. How do I do this?
Sorry, Lisa. So if you go into mentee.com, so MENTI.com. So once you're in mentee.com, it'll look for a code. So if you put in the code 432762, you get access to the survey.
Thank you.
No problem. Just if you have any ideas, we're going to be planning future webinars. We'll take a break for a bit of the summer, but we will come back in September. So we're looking for ideas of topics that you'd be interested in, if you have any ideas. That's great. Lots of ideas there. Thanks, everyone. So I think that's the last question we have. Any other comments? I'll send this Mentee in the follow-up as well, so if there's any other things, you know, sometimes after you log off you think of ideas or other feedback of how you found it when you have time to reflect. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll just stop this. It was great to see so many people attend. It was a very tight time frame, I understand, and it was kind of hard to get everything in, and you know, there were great discussions going on. So we'll have a look as well about if we're doing these again, you know, we'll either get smaller groups or maybe make them a bit longer, because I think that's an important part of it. But thank you very much for attending. I'll send you the follow-up with the links to things that we've talked about and the PowerPoint. Feel free to ask me any questions on any of the things, or follow up on the KA2 projects. And we'll also be planning some more events coming up in the next while around KA2 and different webinar themes as well. So that's it. I hope it's cleared up a bit today, but it was lovely to see you all, and hope you can make any future webinars we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again.
I'll hang on for a bit if anyone has any
Cheers.
questions or.
Yeah, I'll hang on actually, because I have a question.
Great.
Sorry, it doesn't actually show your name on the screen.
Yeah, my name isn't Léargas TCA. Yeah, just Anne Malloy.
Anne, hi Anne.
Hi.
How's it going?
Anne
Nullig is my name. I'm actually with Age and Opportunity. I think we met before at one of the physical events, probably last year sometime.
Probably, yeah.
I'm struck by the fact that the challenges that young people are going through are exactly the same challenges that older people are going through.
It's really interesting.
And myself and my colleagues, we had to literally move everything online as quickly as we could. So